In this video, we're going to go through the scenario builder from Shieldice Studios. So let's get into this. Welcome to Solitary RPG. In this video, we're going to review the scenario builder. However, we're going to review it by actually generating a scenario. And this is from Shieldice Studios. What you're going to need to use this product is going to be a deck of cards, some role-playing game dice, a pencil and eraser, and some sort of notebook or pad of paper to take some notes as you're generating your scenario. To be upfront, Jay sent me a free PDF of the scenario builder. However, I already owned a copy of the scenario builder, and this is a tool I have used plenty of times in generating scenarios. What I like about this product and also the City Street scenario builder is they're just fun to roll up and create scenarios, even if you don't run games on those scenarios or do anything with it. They're just fun to create. And if we reflect back on some of the knowledge we have learned from great solo gamers like Deborah over at Geek Gamers, everything is playing an RPG. And even generating a scenario is just fun, and it is still gaming. So with that in mind, let's dive into this. Let's start off by just doing a flip through of the printed PDF. You're going to have your table of contents. You're going to have basically a how to use this page that gives you very brief instructions, because that's all you need to start generating your scenario. This is where you're going to use cards and just lay out the cards to kind of generate what's in the zones. And we have quite a few zones to choose from. There's 6 different zones. You have a kingdom zone, you have a desolate zone, a coastal zone, a jungle zone, a frozen zone, and a gothic zone. So each one of those zones is going to generate different things for your scenario that are very specific to the type of zone, which is really cool. Then you're going to set up the location with the loot, and you're going to create a timer or a trigger, depending on what you roll, on how the scenario or the conflict is going to resolve in that scenario. You're going to determine the type of scenario. Is it going to be a hazard, a combat, or roleplay? Not everything has to be a combat. Uh, Overcoming a hazard, be it nature, be it a building or something going on, is still a fun adventure, overcoming those hazards, and so are just some role-playing events. But you're going to roll to determine what type of a event you're going to have, and then it's going to break down different events so that you have charts to roll on. So for hazards, we have environmental hazards, trap hazards, magical hazard, resource hazards. For combats, it could be adversary, goal, or drive. So we could just have an adversary, a single combat. We can have an enemy group, a large monster, or an animal or a beast. Those are all fun. And then for role-playing events, we could have a challenge. You witness something. You give aid. NPC quest giver. So you have some basic information to roll with for these different types of events. And then you have extra scenario additions, such as what's beyond the area and what changes over time. You have boons and banes, so some benefits, and party player goals. So you can set some goals up for the party. And then you have a great example at the end. And then here is a map that Jay has provided so that you get an idea of how to set it all up. So that was just a quick flip through of the product. Now what we're going to do is start rolling some dice and actually create our scenario. All right, so to get started, the first thing we need to do is choose a location type table and draw 4 cards, placing them one next to another shown below. So you're going to make a little square of 4 cards. We have our cards. We need to shuffle our cards because we want this to be as random as possible. So when it comes to choosing your location table, that is going to be one of the 6 tables that we saw during the flip through. I am just going to roll a d6 because I want this to be random. and I rolled a 6, which is going to make it the Gothic location zone. So then we're just going to make a note on our notebook here of the location we rolled. Now that we've rolled our location, we're going to draw our 4 cards and we're going to lay them out. I'm going to put them off to the side for right now, and I'm going to keep them face down so that way I don't know what they are quite yet. And that's all we're going to do with cards at this point, so we can put those off to the side. And then we're just going to start going through all the different charts. We're going to determine our location inhabitants, and we're going to get our triggers, and we're going to roll the events and all that good stuff. So let's flip on to the next page. This is just going to talk about building your location, giving you some basic information and events and goals. And then this is going to give us our actual content for each of the locations. So we need to look at the Gothic zone. And what I'm going to do is just draw a quick chart out like that to list my cards. I got the 3 of spades. I got the 6 of diamonds. I got the 8 of hearts. And I got the 5 of spades. So now these cards are done. We no longer need them. We can put those on our stack. And then we just look at our charts for what we have in the area. We had an 8 of hearts. That's going to give us 2 abandoned houses. So I'm liking this so far. I love abandoned houses. They are always fun to explore. We don't have any clubs. We do have 2 spades. We have a 3 of spades. And this is a felled giant oak. This is just awesome so far. Very Gothic feeling with the abandoned houses and stuff. 5 of spades. A ruined windmill. So we got that. So far we're looking like we've got an abandoned location. And then I got a 6 of diamonds. A pumpkin field. And this is going to be awesome. So based on just a little bit of information we have on these charts, we've kind of created a pretty cool scene. We have this giant oak tree. Maybe that's a centerpiece of the whole scene. We have 2 abandoned houses and a ruined windmill. So we have kind of a desolate area, and there's a pumpkin field. So could this be maybe the old farmhouse area for the pumpkin field, and maybe the field is still thriving, and this is just an old site in the area? Or maybe the pumpkin field is being grown and everything by ghost or some sort of spirit or some sort of magic. I don't know. So, but this is just where my mind is right now with what we have generated just by laying down 4 cards and looking at some charts. So let's keep moving forward. Now we're going to set up this. We're going to start setting up the location. First thing we're going to focus on is the loot. You're going to roll 1d4 twice to determine within which zones the loot pieces reside. Then roll below the table to generate the treasure types for both. Pencil a question mark or a chest in the logical location within the zone, perhaps inside a building or another feature. So what we want to do is get our d4, and we're going to roll it twice. So right now I'm just going to make a note for loot location, and we're going to roll a d4. I got a 2 and a 3. So you're going to want to number your location. So you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, however you want to do it. I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So we know where these locations are going to be. So now we know in the pumpkin field there's going to be some treasure or loot, and in maybe the abandoned houses there's going to be a little bit. Now let's roll for the loot and see what's going to be in there. I rolled a 16. So in the pumpkin field there's going to be armor. So I'll just write pumpkin field, and we'll just write armor. So right off the bat, just not even continuing with the product itself, but just pumpkin field and armor, I immediately go, maybe the scarecrow. There's a scarecrow in the pumpkin field, and maybe it has some armor on it, and but it's also alive, and you got to go fight it, and then you get the armor. Like, that's just a random idea just based on the information we have. But we'll continue on with the scenario. Number 310 is going to be a map. So I'm just going to write houses and map. So far we got some really cool stuff. Obviously the map could lead to additional adventures. So I'm liking it so far. So we've created our loot. We've created the zones the loot are going to be in. Step number 2 here. When looking at your zone features, you may wish to drop in some NPCs, roll a d4 and choose which zone at random, then add the appropriate NPC. So for example, if you have a library zone, you may wish to add a librarian or students. We have kind of an abandoned area, so let's roll a d4. We got a 3. So we're just going to write NPC zone 3. And we have not created an NPC. I'm looking at abandoned houses. I might want to think about this as we continue on before I add the NPC. There's not an actual, there's an NPC quest giver, but there's not just a general NPC chart that you can roll on. But I would just want to figure out something that would be appropriate in an abandoned house. Obviously, maybe a fellow traveler, maybe a wounded person who was in the pumpkin field who got attacked by the scarecrow with the armor pieces on. I don't know. We can think about that. So, but we'll just come back to that as this all unfolds. And then number 3, you may also wish to look at areas and zone features and just jot down some notes or lore surrounding the location. This needs to be brief and can spark ideas once the trigger and events are in place. So, and these steps we're going to come back to as we're unfolding this scenario. For right now, though, we want to create our timers and triggers. So what you're going to do is you got a 50-50 roll to decide if whatever the events are that are going to take place, is it going to be based on time, or is it going to be based on a trigger, an action that takes place? So, and you can also roll to determine at where the zone is going, where these are going to take place. So it says here to flip a coin. I don't have a coin on me, so we'll just do your standard D6 rolls. Evens, it's going to be timer. Odds, it's going to be a trigger. I rolled an even, so we're going to have a timer event or timer situation. We don't know what the event's going to be. So we can then roll a D8 to determine how that timer is going to happen. Again, I love how Jay is using all of our wonderful dice that we have in our collections. It's also going to be a 6 at midday. So we've got that. Now we're going to roll another D4 to determine the zone location that the trigger takes place. I rolled a 4. So it's going to take place in the ruined windmill. Zone 4. I'll just write down so that I don't forget. Windmill. All right. So now we have basically a mechanism to put pressure on the PCs. Maybe they find the map, and at midday, this is when the scarecrow comes to life and patrols or something like that. I don't know. We're still going to mess around with that. Scarecrow with the armor, though, is really sticking in my brain right now. So, but yeah, so we're moving along. Now, what type of event are we going to have? So this is one of the reasons why you don't want to predetermine your NPC or any of your lore or anything, because you kind of want to figure out what everything's going to be before you blend it all together. So now what we're going to do is just write down event type, and this is going to be a D6 roll. I rolled a 5, which is going to be role play. We have all the different charts that we would be able to roll on for these different events. I am going to roll a D4 to determine what type of a role play event we're going to have. So What is the event? You know, and again, just taking notes right now, not building a map, not doing anything. I got a 3. So now we go to the table for 3, give aid, and this is a d20 roll. So we'll roll on that. Did that, okay, 7. A peasant cries for help. I love it. I just love it. Because I was talking about a citizen or a person in the abandoned home, and maybe they were injured or something, and then we rolled this, you know, number 7 for a peasant cries for help. So it's almost like Jay's material is reading my mind, which is starting to creep me out. But I've always loved Jay's work. He's got some very creative stuff. And then all this stuff just kind of ties in together, and it just works. So you're just seeing it unfold here on the video. All right, so now we got some extra scenario additions just beyond the area. So this is creating kind of an environment around your scenario where you're actually going to be. This is a D20 roll. I rolled an 8. Pilgrims trug along a long road. All right, so maybe based on what we had in the area, there's some pilgrims, and pilgrims can be anything. It could be a town, a group of people leaving a town, or it could be farmers like going back, you know, going along the road, just because you don't have to go by the words, but you're just kind of pulling from the words to create part of that scenario. So let me write this down. All right, so I've captured that information on my notes. Changes over time. So what will change over time? That's an 11. The area becomes darker. And so I've captured that information. And then we got boons and banes, and then we got party player goals. But looking at our scenario, we've got a lot going on. So I think the most important thing we need to pay attention to is our timer, because that is when the event's going to trigger. And I like how this changes over time and how we can tie this into a midday event, because most, I guess we could say, gothic or horror type things take place in the dark, but our event's midday where the sun would be at its peak. So maybe at midday, the area gets darker, just for no apparent reason. The area gets darker. And when that happens, so we'll have to create a time schedule, you know, when the PCs show up there, and kind of keep track of time, because time is going to be important because of this trigger. And then at midday, so let's just say noon, or 2 o'clock, if you want to, you know, kind of give yourself a little bit more flexibility with that time. As they're in the area exploring, it just all of a sudden just gets dark. And I would stay away from cloud cover or something. Maybe like a mist rolls in, creating darkness or something like that. And when you go to light your torches, maybe the torches don't light because the mist is too moist and causes the flames to go out, and you're kind of on your own. And maybe that midday is when the scarecrow comes to life and starts patrolling the area. What draws you to the area? Obviously, there's going to be pilgrims, or some group of people are in the area walking along a long road, so they're either going to a town or coming back from a town. Who knows? You can create that scenario. Or just simply say there's a bunch of people walking off. You hear cries for help, so you go investigate. And that's going to be the peasants, and maybe they're in the abandoned house and something happened to them. Maybe they were attacked by something, or maybe they fell down a hole or broke an ankle or something. Whatever, you're just going to create that. Or maybe that's the injured person crying for help is going to give them the clue they need to know that maybe the scarecrow comes to life and all that good stuff. So I think we've got a pretty good scenario. So let's look at this boons and banes. So you roll a d4 for boon, bane, zone placement, and place a boon or a bane into the relevant place within their respective zones. You may mark these on the map, draw a feature, circle them green, do whatever you want to do. So we got 2 d20s, so we're going to just take some notes on all of this stuff. First, we need to decide which zones these are going to be in. So let's roll for the boon. It's going to be in number 4, and the bane is going to be in number 3. And what that's basically saying is there'll be something in these two. Something in this zone will give them a bane. Obviously, I'm already linking the bane to the NPC that is in that zone that's crying for help. And then there's going to be a boon in the windmill, and we had something else in the windmill. Oh, okay, so when they make it to the windmill, that'll be the midday. That's the midday area where that takes place, that trigger takes place. So we'll have to figure that out. We can also just change it. We'll make it work. Again, that's what's fun about these scenario builders like this. You just get a bunch of information and you're just trying to make it all, tie it all together when you're done. Let's roll for our boon. It's going to be number 11. There's going to be a weapons rack in zone number 4, which is the ruined windmill. Again, maybe that's where our person crying for help tells them about that, and we set off that trigger. And the bane is going to be of darkness. Everything is just really coming together with this. So yeah, this is fun stuff. And then what is the party player's goal? If you're playing a one-shot or looking for ideas why the characters may have entered the scenario in the first place, you may wish to randomize the goals and solo players using the table below. So we'll just make a note. I'm just going to say party goals. Roll our d20. I rolled a 19. Hoping to be cured. Hoping to be cured. Okay, that has a lot of context that you can pull from. Maybe your party's been on the road for a long time and they're just looking for a place to rest. So they're looking for their rest action, and they notice this ruined windmill in the distance and they head over there. And as they get closer, maybe they pass the people on the long road and they're told about that farm area and they go over there. And then as they get closer, they start hearing cries for help. So maybe they pick up the pace and they get in there. Maybe it's a kid who got lost from the party, or maybe it's someone that's injured. You can really pull into that. But I would use that person as maybe a clue giver, like they get an idea of what's in the area. And they want to rest, so they help and they do all these things, and maybe they venture into the windmill, and that's going to be our midday event. And then that's going to set off the darkness, and that's when I'm going to go. I love this idea of the scarecrow coming to life in the pumpkin field, and it comes to life, and then that becomes something they have to combat or overcome, and we just continue going on from there. All right, so I took a little bit of time after getting all of my results from the scenario builder and came up with my scenario. I made a change list here. So these are all the things that I made changes to. Let me go through that, and then I'll kind of read to you my little scenario. First thing I'm changing is the timer and trigger. We got the result for a timer and midday zone 4, which is the ruined windmill. And I changed it to be 2 things. I'm actually going to make it a timer and a trigger. My scenario, I can do these things. You have the power. So basically, if the PCs are in the area and we approach midday, the mist will roll in, causing the light to not go completely dark, but visibility is going to be reduced, and that's our bane that we got Shire of Darkness, and we also had another spot for changes over time for the area becomes dark. So we're going to use the mist. That will happen midday. It is going to be a usual thing, but it's only over this area. It's not like the region, it's just this little area. But also, if it's not a time thing, when they go into the windmill, that's also going to immediately trigger the mist to come in. And when the mist comes in, the scarecrow goes on patrol. And that's how it's all going to play out. That is the, the heart of this adventure. Changing the weapon rack from being a weapon rack to being a light source that can actually be used in the mist. So the bane of darkness is you can't light torches. Your torches aren't, if you have a torch, it goes out. If you have a lantern, it goes out. Inside the windmill, there's going to be a special light source that the PCs can find that will allow them to see in the mist. The pilgrims that are traveling, that is just how the story is going to open up, and we'll get into that when it happens. But you're basically traveling with these pilgrims. They're actually just a caravan of vendors and transporters that are going to the next kingdom. The NPC is going to give you a clue about what's taking place in the area, and I'm changing a felled oak tree to just an oak tree. It's a visual thing. I didn't want the oak tree to be cut down or anything like that. It's just going to be a very nice oak tree that is just going to be visual dressing. It's just going to be dressing. It's going to have no relevance, but that's what we're going with. So our scenario is going to start out early morning. The sun is just breaking the horizon enough to see. You're traveling with a caravan. You've been traveling with this caravan for the past week. They're just merchants and craft people that are heading to the next kingdom to sell their goods. And you've just been traveling with them. You weren't hired, nothing like that. That's just where you're at. You noticed off in the distance, there's the blades of a windmill. That's all you can see off in the distance. It's not way off in the distance, but it is off in the distance. See the blades of a windmill? You are like, well, we don't necessarily want to go to this kingdom. If you wanted to, you could say your PCs are wanted in that kingdom and you don't want to go, so you break away from the caravan to go rest in that area. You just think it's a good place to rest. You are tired. You've been traveling for a week. You just want to rest up, things like that. Normal, and that was part of our results for the party's goal, hoping to be cured. That this is your cure. You're going to go rest. Once you start getting near the location, you're going to hear the cries of a person, making that person be a young adventurer. And you hear the cries for help in the area as you start approaching. Once the PCs approach the area, then we just get into descriptive information here, and we just start describing the area. There's a pumpkin field that is growing. It's very, that actually could also give you the time frame for the year. Like, when do pumpkins grow? How big are the pumpkins? So you can use that to kind of give you a seasonal time. So that could help you with weather and all that good stuff. But you see a pumpkin field. It is alive and well. It is being well maintained and cared for. But the buildings around are all ruined buildings, abandoned buildings, and there's just this very nice oak tree that is just, it's a gorgeous looking oak tree, very large, and it's just a visual thing, but that's what you see. So you just describe that information out. You can then hear the cries much clearer, and they're coming from one of the abandoned buildings. You go into the abandoned building, and this young adventurer looks like it's been attacked by something. You don't know what, but there's like scratches and cuts all over its body. But doesn't look like an animal attack. It's just a bunch of scratches and stuff. Maybe you can add in a little bit of a clue that some of the injuries look like straw or hay are impaled in his skin. Again, our scarecrow is the person that we're taking care of the area. So So yeah, so you have that, and he's rambling. He's rambling about a creature coming out of the pumpkin field and attacking him, but he's not making a lot of sense. So that adds a little bit of that mystery. And as we continue on, you're too late though. This young adventurer passes away from the stress and the fear of what happened to him. All, death by a thousand cuts type thing. So there we go. But in his hands, he's clutching onto a piece of paper. You take the piece, that's bait. He's clutching onto a piece of paper. Most PCs are going to pick up the piece of paper, take a read at it. On the piece of paper, it looks like it's a map. And again, that was one of our results that we had for the adventure. That was the one of the loot pieces. There's a map, so there we go. It's a map that leads to this area. That's all it is. It's not going to lead further on. You could make it more than that, but for right now, we're doing a one shot. Leads to this area. There's an X over the windmill that draws your attention to it. It's like, that's an important spot. This is bait. These are seeds. This is all it is to see if your PCs are going to take advantage of it. Also, the map kind of has a warning. It's labeled, like at the title, the Shrine of Darkness. Is the oak tree the Shrine of Darkness? Could be. Is it just the area? But it warns about a darkness. And that, again, is talking about the mist that rolls in. And that's where there's the X on the windmill. But that's it. That's our scenario. That is everything we created using the scenario builder. That gives us all the seed information. Now you start just rolling, if you're playing solo or in a group, what are your PCs going to do? So this is your opening scene. This is everything that you would just, like if you bought a published adventure, you would just read this information, maybe give the PCs a little map of the area. What are you going to do? That's the cliffhanger that we talk about with adventures. Like, you always want to leave on a cliffhanger. So we've created the cliffhanger to get the PCs excited or the players excited about, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then everything starts to unfold. This will be a quick unfold because obviously the biggest seed is, hey, we're going to go to the windmill. We go to the windmill, boom, trigger. Immediately everything happens. But they may spend some time. They may bury the young adventurer and pay their last respects for being respectful. They may just hunt around the homes, and you can start giving some things. Maybe they go to the oak tree because it is dressing and it is to draw their attention to it. Maybe they're going to go out and get a pumpkin and have a pumpkin pie. Who knows? But anyway, so that's kind of what we created with the information that we have. It's just a nice little adventure that I could get lost in for a couple hours playing my favorite role-playing game. And these are just fun. This is just a fun way to role play without actually role playing a game. It's just working on a scenario, generating a lot of informations, and kind of putting all that GM prep. And that's what I consider this stuff, is GM prep is a lot of fun. Putting all this stuff together and then figuring out, okay, created this cool scenario. What rule system do I want to use? Do I want to put this into my world building, or do I just want to do a one shot? Do I want this to lead to other adventures? Because we also have a map that's in the houses, and maybe that map is going to lead to other adventures. So many places to go, so much to do. But yeah, just a lot of fun. Jay, thank you very much for continuing to create great products and keeping us solo players engaged in the hobby. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. Bye.